Welcome, everybody. We are a big group today from all over the country. I want to first thank Inside Higher Ed for facilitating this webinar today. As we're starting here, we have a quick poll question that we'd love for you to participate in. I'll go over that a little bit later, and we'll be taking questions at the end, so feel free to drop those in the QA, and we'll try to get to all those when we conclude. If not, we'll email you. But I'm going to go ahead and hand it to Corey Reed from TCU to do a quick intro.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Corey Reed. I'm the Director of Web Management at Texas Christian University in Fort Worth, Texas.
And I am Jeff Dillon, a digital strategist for higher education at SearchStax. If you really want to get Corey and I's ear, mention bikes because we both are avid cyclists. So just a quick commonality there. But I was a web director at Sacramento State for the last 13 years. Prior to that, I was at Northern Arizona University in a similar role. And so I still consider myself in that role of being a web director and kind of really in the trenches with everyone here. But in 2021, I left to create EdTech Connect, a crowdsourced platform for higher ed tech. And that's when I discovered SearchStax. And SearchStax is a search experience company that's focused on elevating site search for higher education. And we're really laser focused on higher education. And there's a lot of reasons why. So we're going to go over that and start off with the top challenges for higher education marketers. We really have so many of these. We're not going to go into all of them, and we'll touch on these, but starting off with an increasing student expectations. And this isn't just from the digital experience side, where we're competing with the Netflix and Spotify's for the digital native audience's attention, but it's really for the degree itself too. We're going to touch on the complexity of higher ed. I have a whole slide on that. Multi-device access. How do we meet students where they are? Higher ed really struggles with personalization. The complexity we have with search is often an afterthought with that. And it's really hard in higher ed to personalize. You know, we don't have the budgets and it's just such a complex environment. Search and navigation is huge. Navigation is really challenging with the complexity we're dealing with, and search is often an afterthought. So the big one that we'll go into a little bit here is the enrollment cliff, as many of you've probably heard. And there's a little more data that I have that I talk about this a lot. It's some information I found from college transitions that really shows that we know that the birth rate 18 years ago kind of fell off. We were expecting that, but there's all these other factors at play that is really causing us to kind of struggle to build these incoming classes. The College Board has a student search service. Those names aren't available anymore because these PSATs and SATs went digital. So the way we used to build these incoming classes with this student search service is just more difficult, and it's affecting some of the schools, certain types of schools, even harder. Private two-year colleges, they rely more on tuition dollars than they do federal funding. So they're being hit hard. Schools in declining populations, they recruit from local regional pools and can't afford to go outside of that. So it's expected to hit these schools in the Northwest and the Midwest pretty hard. But it's something that we all kind of are aware of, and we're seeing a lot of schools come to us with these challenges in mind. And now I'm going to jump right into the layers of complexity in higher ed. We talk a lot about this, but before working, with SearchStax here, I've been involved with many industries, and I was bringing digital experience platforms to state and local government, a little bit with financial institutions. But I can tell you from my experience, I really think higher ed is the most complex environment, industry, vertical out there that I've worked with at least. And there's a lot of reasons for that. One is the multiple personas we have. We have students, and they have all of these types of students, prospective students, current students. Within current students, we have all these types of current students that have different needs. So this is even a simplified version of all of our types of personas that we're trying to satisfy on our website. Parents, alumni, donors, community can be broken down very, very granularly. Then we have to layer digital governance on top of that, right? We're kind of the victims of our own success with all these content management systems that we implemented in the last 10 to 15 years that now have sometimes hundreds of developers that we have to wrangle. And we used to say, herd the cats to kind of let's have some guidelines, and it's really challenging. But then we have all these types of content. It's not just a website. So often your search is searching your website, you're indexing your website, but even within websites, there's all these types of websites. There's faculty websites, which are kind of their own thing often, right? The faculty kind of may have their own templates and they're in their special area, all the way to the other side of where there's program information that may or may not be in your course catalog that's very authoritative and almost a contract with your students. Event calendars, campus maps, research repositories, those things need to be found, and it's getting harder and harder to find them. But then we have subdomains. Let's layer subdomains on top of that. So all these types of content are living in these different areas. So let's think of like engineering.schoolname.com. So all the colleges might have their own subdomain, or the library, or the athletics might be on its own .com. The auxiliaries, right? The food service. So it just gets more and more complex as we go up. And then we say, oh, we'll have navigation. We'll fix it. We'll have card sorting and we'll have our new website. And that's really challenging with our budgets, with this complex environment. So in comes search. We really think search can be this glue and tie it all together. And it's kind of an underutilized part of all that. Corey, what do you think? Does this resonate? What's the environment like at TCU with complexity?
Yeah, it's like you were sitting in on most of my project meetings, Jeff. So, TCU is not a huge school, right? We'll get into a little bit of a university profile in a minute, but even no larger than we are, we still have all the complexity, or what feels like all the same complexity. It's all these same challenges. And almost laughed out loud when you said navigation, right? Because you're right. So there's so much emphasis placed on if we can just get the menu right, if we can just manage the right taxonomy for the site, if we can just get the information architecture just right, it'll make sense of all this content. But it's one of my team members used to call it a crazy quilt, right? We have this crazy quilt of information, and we're trying to present it in a way that makes sense to everyone. And you even know from user testing, right, that we're all very dynamic. We all come at websites differently. We bring our personality, we bring our, you know, our preferences to the table when we're navigating content. And a menu bar has no chance on, meeting everyone's needs all the time. So I agree. We are complicated. Our content's super complicated, and site search is a more reasonable solution to this than the old beloved menu bar.
Every school I've talked to relates to this in some way or another. So I really like to talk about the complexity. But in the beginning of when we started this webinar, we did have a poll. Let's put this poll out here. And this is the question we asked you. And, what was that? So here were the options: faculty contact info, careers or jobs. What are they searching for? Academic programs, the library. And most of you got it right. This is kind of a myth out there. And we want to dispel this myth that search is only used internally. Oh, people will just go custom search. When they get on our website, these are just the internal people. But 73% of you got it right. 15% said careers or jobs. 8% said faculty contact info, and 5% said library. And to your credit, those are all pretty top searches on most websites. So they're all popular, but academic programs are the most popular. And I've seen this data. It's been out there for a while, like Forrester. Get to the right slide here. Finding information about majors and programs is the #1 reason prospective students visit a college website. Inside Higher Ed published this. I have experienced this myself, and that I've talked to dozens of schools. They've shown me their data. um, or we've talked about it, and there's tens of thousands of searches being conducted on your homepage. That's number one. It's happening. So sure, they're searching other places, but they are using your site to search, and they're probably further along in their search when they look for something. So I don't have that in a data format yet because I've talked to a couple dozen schools, but this aligns with what I've seen with students looking for degrees. And let's see, let's go. So one of the things I've also discovered in talking to Corey and other schools is there's some really powerful search terms and use cases that we're seeing. This is kind of a newer thing that we're seeing. And what we're calling it is search for good. And it's this idea that you can get ahead of things that might be aligned to your mission or your values, or I even like to say students need a very foundational level of support at a school. There's a diagram I've created. It's a Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where the foundation is safety and support, right? To succeed up the ladder. That's what their students really need. So what you're looking at now is a list of key terms that TCU, along with a lot of other schools we're seeing, are implementing in their search to make sure the right results are displaying. So they might not be the most popular. Maybe they're seeing at a certain time, like COVID. Yeah, that came up years ago. That was at the top. But if mental health is being searched, even if it's not huge, you might want to make sure they get to the right result. So Corey, you're one of the schools that's kind of leading this charge. Can you talk a little bit about these terms and how you're using the search for good idea that we're presenting?
Yeah, boy, in this current political environment, this strikes even closer to home, right? Because it's interesting about connecting people and maintaining community when it seems like a lot in the public square we're often being driven apart. Um, we know that student physical and mental health is a real priority, and it's a very sensitive subject. We have some really talented people on staff that have developed some really great programs and resources to support students. They've done some pretty groundbreaking work, and we wanted to make sure that people could find that, right? A lot of people might speak to that, and different faculty might have some research that touches on that. What we didn't want is to have, 1,000 different matches on uh, some research or some academic content to push, like, where are the mental health resources? Like, how can I talk to somebody right now in this moment? We didn't want that getting buried under, granted, great academic research, but academic research may not be the thing that saves a student's life, right?
Mhm.
But having access to the mental health support line and getting connected with a counselor is something that could. And so we
Right.
wanted to make sure that we could go in, simulate some searches, look at some data that's being searched, and then use some of the interesting tools that are inside SearchStax, like a combination of promotions and content weighting, just to make
Mhm.
sure that we're surfacing those resources at that time and point of need,
Right.
so we can support our
Mm.
students.
One specific example, I don't think it was TCU, but it was a different school. You may have done this too. Searching for transgender was pulling up a bunch of research, and they said we just need people to find the bathrooms. So what they wanted to do is just send people to the department or the center that has all the answers. It was a good.
Right.
We're seeing more and more of those types of use cases. But let's talk about the bigger picture at TCU, Corey. Just can you give us a high level perspective of TCU and what you're doing?
Sure. So we're a private value-based institution. Like I mentioned, we're in Fort Worth, Texas. We have about 117 undergrad programs. We're heavily undergraduate focused, but growing the graduate program. And we have 37 doctoral programs, about almost 13,000 total enrollment. Um, And we really pride ourselves on maintaining what we feel is a really nice student faculty ratio, trying to keep it around 13, 14 to 1. So the idea is to try to be very high touch, to be very community oriented. We really think that, the one-on-one support is a part of our brand, right? It's a part of our values. It's that experience that we want. And my admission team, they always tell me, Corey, if we could just get somebody to come and step foot on our campus, they're pretty likely to end up attending here, right? They'll want to stick around if they come and see how friendly and welcoming that we are in person. So I'm like, great, I'm now going to take that on myself professionally on the website to try to make our web network that same level of welcoming. And having a robust search is a big part. It's like the digital equivalent of having that really nice smiling face at the front desk that says, "Hi, what can I help you with today?" Right? So
Yeah.
that's kind of us in a nutshell.
Well, can you talk a little bit about your team and your tech stack?
Sure. So we are an enormous, lavishly funded team of 5 people, and we're keeping an eye on our network. We have several 100,000 pages of content, um, some number of subdomains. It's in flux, right? And in general, we keep we actively manage those top tier sites, what I consider top tier. So you think of the
Mhm.
www.tcu.edu core site for us, the colleges and the schools, those high level administrative sites like
Mhm.
student recruitment, the registrar or bursar's office, financial aid. And we house those almost exclusively on Modern Campus. We also have some WordPress in our tech stack. And of course, like a lot of our peers, we have a great many of other legacy
Yeah.
products and systems that we stitch together. And then we use Localist and Campus Bird from Concept 3D for kind of a combination of our university calendar and our interactive campus map. And then we found ways that we can talk about later to stitch those together using SearchStax, um, so that people don't have to concern themselves with how complicated things are behind the scenes, right? It's kind of a Wizard of
Right,
Oz. Just
right,
we'll
right.
stay behind the curtain,
Yeah.
pulling levers. And
So just so, like everyone knows, when you say Concept 3D, Concept 3D acquired Localist a few years ago. So that is their calendar. I like to put that on here because it's a pretty common calendar out there. But let's
Mhm.
talk a little bit about Modern Campus. Our SearchStax site search is agnostic. It doesn't matter what CMS you're using. The larger the school, the more CMSs they generally have. The smaller schools usually are a little more centralized. But specifically with your course catalog,
Mhm.
um, how are you managing your course catalog with your website? And I think you said Modern Campus is kind of driving that too.
Well, it's interesting because we have our course catalog that our registrar's office uses. Um, they're using a different partner to house sort of the official course content with like classes and that sort of thing. But we built out our own academic program page content. So basically, all that high level, top of the funnel academic program content that we talked about during the poll, we built all of that in Modern Campus.
Mhm.
We basically sat down and created a content matrix to decide what kind of information we needed to capture for those top of the funnel prospective students, and then um, thought through ways that we could make that more consumer friendly, right? So mix and match different program uh, characteristics. And so we defined all that in Modern Campus, and then when we were ready to index it all and crawl it with SearchStax, we're able to use that rich metadata to then turn on some of those advanced search
Awesome.
features. Uh,
Perfect.
yeah.
Well, let's take a look. Let's see
Okay.
what you're doing at TCU here. Oh, and let's talk about the strategy first.
Okay.
What really drove your decision to enhance your site search?
Sure. So, I mean, long story short, it's all about trying to deliver a really nice customer experience or user experience. Like I mentioned, we kind of pride ourselves on being a friendly, welcoming place and trying to make our web presence that same way. We wanted to make a great experience for people. We wanted them to come away feeling good about their touch points. So, in order to have a good plan, we wanted to make data-driven decisions. So, it's too easy to get into a planning meeting or a project meeting, and it's sort of the war of opinions, right? Where
Mhm.
it's like whoever's going to speak loud enough, right? And be like, no, my opinion is more factual than your
Yeah,
opinion. So we
yes.
wanted to be data driven, which
Mhm,
means you have to have good analytics.
mhm,
Um, that was a big piece of it. And then the second sort of leg of that stool would be we wanted to break down or stitch together all those different pockets of
mhm,
page data. Like you mentioned, there's research, there's content, there's a great many of lots of really interesting stuff out there in the network, but it's in these little pockets, it's
mhm.
sort of hidden under a bushel basket. And so we wanted to bring those all together and
Yeah.
flatten them out. And then the last piece is we know, even though we're a little bit removed from some of those dates and deadlines because we don't all have, ourselves or a student or someone close to us that's dealing with those deadlines, but we know they're there and we want to track those things.
Mhm.
We might know top of mind. Okay, obviously we know when our admission deadlines are, right? But what about things
Mhm.
like summer camps
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so the graduate deadlines that are
Yeah.
different than undergrad. So we wanted to be able to address those.
It's
Uh,
very cyclical, right? Every year it's kind of the
yeah,
same, cycles that we're seeing is what I've
right.
experienced. All right. Well, then with this strategy in mind, we'll take a look at TCU's site search. Want to walk us through your
Sure.
site search here, Corey?
Yeah. All right. So basically, what we wanted to do is give someone a one-stop shop so they could see um, the some major sections of our content, right? So um, we know from user testing that people think of our network of sites as being one monolithic site, which would make our lives a lot easier if it were, but it's not. So we wanted this all results experience just to kind of flatten it out and bring everything together, and then take advantage of what SearchStax calls facets, right? So if you see on the left-hand side, we have a couple of common facets. So document type probably makes sense to most folks here on
Mhm,
the call, category, and then we have more. You can define any number of facets. So this is the main kind of your Google style search experience. And then because we know that program content is always, I mean, year round, it's in our top 10 most
mhm,
visited pages in most search queries. So we wanted to put program information front and center. And so if you notice when we switch to the programs tab, now the facets that are on the left-hand side are specific to this content. So it's really easy to then narrow it down to say, I'm really specifically interested in the graduate certificate program or something like that. And you can really narrow
Yeah.
down your results pretty quickly.
Yeah, I might have done that quick fast here. We're in a slide deck here. So like if I click on all results, I'll go back. So you can see I'm highlighted on that, but like Corey's saying, the fastest on the left are contextual. And I'll click one more time here and we'll go over to campus map.
Sure. Yeah, and so we've mentioned the local list for the university calendar. This is a Concept 3D interactive campus map. We had had it for several years, right? And people knew about it, but we thought that we could drive more engagement with the interactive map. We could answer
Mhm,
more questions if we just put it front and center, so they don't have to memorize yet another subdomain. So we added it, and we're seeing a spike in engagement with our map, which is
mhm.
great. Because even no larger than we are, it can be a little bit confusing for folks. They're fresh to campus, they want to find their way around. Um, and now we've embedded it right here in the search experience. So
So I love showing this site, Corey, because when we talked about the complexity earlier, this is what you're going to see more and more of out there. This isn't, I would say, the standard yet, but it's becoming more like, how do we handle all these different silos of content? These tabs at the top are a great example of what you can do. A couple others that we often work with are an events calendar or a directory information, research
Mhm.
repositories. So those facets, those tabs at the top can be whatever you want.
Mhm.
Um, so I just wanted to really point out this layout is kind of becoming the go-to really higher ed type of user experience. So it's great to show what you're like the front end, the user experience. Let's go to the other end and see what does data look like, and what did data look like before you went with SearchStax?
Mm.
What are we looking at here, Corey?
All right. So so Jeff asked me, um, what kind of search analytic data do you have with your current solution? And so I just logged in and I pulled some and I'm like, here you go. What do you think? And I got a little bit of the sideways puppy dog face. Like, what do you do with this data? I'm like, that's a really good question. It's not very actionable. And if you spend enough time with it, maybe you could suss out some sort of insight. But it's pretty painful.
So
It takes,
granted, this was before like Corey had signed the contract. We're going in, we're going to develop, and like, well, let's find out what you had before. And it was a funny conversation.
I was
And
sad to show it to you, to be
yeah,
honest.
so this is before. So now let's go to say like, what does data look like that you can really use? And this is the analytics dashboard within SearchStack. So walk us through how you use this dashboard, Corey.
Sure. So this is a little like, zoomed in piece of it, right? There's a lot of other interesting stuff in here, but this is great. I like how scannable it is. You can very quickly see what your search volumes look like, right? So total searches, searches with clicks. So how much engagement are you getting? What's your click-through rate? Search latency just tells you, make sure that you don't have some sort of, networking communication issue that you need to dig into. And then average click position is one that I really like to watch. It's the one at the bottom left. And
Mm,
it basically tells you what's the average position within the search results of the item that someone decided was most relevant to what they were looking for and clicked on it, right?
mm,
So it's really exciting to see that when it's down, well below 4,
mm,
because that means we're putting relevant matches right up there at the very top of the list of results. And then the other two charts you can keep an eye on. One is a graph of the click-through rate over, multiple days at a time, and then no result searches. So that tells you as a percentage of the total search volume
mm.
how many of those basically result in dead ends?
So all of our dashboards are interactive. So we are just giving you a sneak peek today. We can't click through into everything, but I think you said this once, Corey. You said this is snackable data. If I only have a few minutes to go in, that old table you just showed us isn't going to do anything. I could spend a few minutes here and be like, oh, I need to dig into this, or maybe I don't. So it's
Mm.
a great to see these timelines, right? This over time, this data becomes more valuable. The trend, like your click-through trend is going the right way. 54 is incredible. We'll talk about that in a second. The no results is going the right way, right? We want that to be going down. So in a snapshot, you kind of get something at least.
Right.
And then you can dig down a little deeper and find out what are the most popular searches. There's that 54% click-through rate again. And you can start to set benchmarks. Like we know we're a search experience company. We know that anything over 35% is incredible. We've seen because we see, clients tell us, and we have that data. Um, Average click position, like Corey was saying, is it in the top 3? People generally aren't going to be going pages deep into your search. And how many searches per session are they conducting? So under 3 is generally ideal. And we're not going to show this today, but you could dig down into these top search terms and say like, well, where people are searching for nursing, that's at the top, but where are they going when they search for nursing? What's coming up? So you can really dive into that data. But one of the most popular data points that we have and that we can offer that I think is not being utilized enough in many solutions is no results search data. And so what you're looking at here is a snapshot of some of the no results searches taken from TCU at a certain point in time. So I want Corey to talk a little bit about this because we can kind of spend a little time on like, what do you do? Like, what does this mean? What are we looking at here with these terms, Corey?
So just know that I have no shame, that I'm willing to stand up here and show you kind of some of my deep dark secrets, because you see course catalog on here and you're like, what are you doing? Like, that's it. I'm out. I'm hanging up on this webcast. We saw that and there was a moment of panic, right? Oh, what in the world is going on? How is that in the no results searches? And then I received an email saying, by the way, we switched our course catalog to a new vendor on a new subdomain. And it hadn't been crawled. We weren't linking to it. There was no um, yeah, it was a little bit of a surprise architectural change, and I knew it was coming. I just didn't know the timing. So we basically did a quick pivot and said, all right, let's put together a promotion. So someone searches for course catalog, we'll put the undergraduate link and the graduate catalog link front and center right there in the search until we get the new catalog crawled, right? And then it'll fix itself organically.
Yeah. I
Um,
love that's not a common one, but it's great. Like, hey, this is I'll say it for the first time here. Search can be your monitoring tool, but it's it can be used that way.
Right. And there's some interesting ones too. Things like how much is housing? That's one that could be both a content marketing idea, right? Like how let's make sure that we're using the right nomenclature, right? So no more room and board, now it's food and housing. Making sure that we're writing content that's matching the kind of evolving
Yeah.
language of people, what they're searching for. And then some of these are just opportunities to try to connect some dots, right? So we don't we don't have Japanese right now, but we do have Asian studies. We don't have Japanese, but we do have Chinese language. We offer that as a minor. There are some of these things. We don't have civil engineering, but we have electrical and mechanical.
I have to ask you this, Corey. Do you have a cyber technology degree?
We don't have a cyber technology degree, but we actually have some interesting research around kind of a combination of um, criminology and some cybersecurity um, concepts out there. So we don't have it, but we have some things that are related to it, and they wouldn't be direct
Yeah.
synonyms, but it would be worth
Yeah.
redirecting some of those,
So
or talking to our computer science department and say, hey, we're getting a lot of demand for cyber technology.
yeah.
What say you? Is that something we
Yeah.
should
Yeah.
develop?
So Corey's mentioned a couple of the features, which one he mentioned was promotions. It's a feature where you can say, we want this to come up to the top. You mentioned that earlier, but then he just mentioned the uh, synonyms. So synonyms can let you point a search to a different term. Like you're saying, cyber technology goes to, I forget what degree it was there. But do you have any use cases where you see something on here and like, gosh, we need to fill a content gap? Anything like that?
Sure. I mean, obviously the course catalog was a big one, right? But then also things like cost per hour in housing. Like we want to make sure that we're creating content that's using terms that are meeting people's expectations, because you can try to use synonyms and things like that, but some of these, it might be a better solve if you just go write a quick blog post, right? Like go to
Mhm.
the admissions center has a pretty popular blog that they use. And so it's a great way to influence their content marketing to say, hey, let's write a blog post about how much is housing? What does that look like? What are the new options? We just built 2 residence halls on East Campus.
Mhm.
Like, could you write a blog post about that kind of captures that kind of search query content and then also kind of builds on our story?
Right. So when we talk about no results, I sometimes get the question, well, why can't AI just do all this? Like we're in that world now, right? Um, well, we have a very practical view on AI at SearchStax, and it comes down to really believing we need a hybrid approach. You've probably still seen there's a lot of hallucinations out there. And in higher ed, the stakes are high. So we've been using AI for years, building with machine learning in the background from the start. We know search at the atomic level. So we need to continue to embrace these core search technologies and augment them with the LLMs, but keep that human intelligence as part of the process. And I'm going to show you a little example of why and how that is. But Corey, what's your take on the AI? You've been testing a little bit, I know.
Right. Well, I mean, obviously it's a hugely popular topic right now, right? And that's
Mhm.
you feel like AI has been enabled in everything from, you know, bars of soap to your toaster oven. And I think some of those make sense, and some of them are just wacky, right? They're almost border on quackery, where you're like, I don't want that. I don't want that in my bowl of cereal. Just keep your AI out of my cereal. Um, I think there are some tools that blend the power of AI. So it's obviously tremendously capable at pattern matching, right?
Mhm.
Um, LLMs, part of why they hallucinate, right, is because they're expert at matching patterns, and they're like, here's a pattern that would here's a variation or an iteration that meets this pattern,
Mhm.
right? And they don't really care that it's accurate or not. They're just like, it fits the pattern. So that's great, but sometimes they get it horribly and laughably wrong. And so I think the tools that do it right are the ones that couple the power and speed of AI with a little bit of,
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's
human
show them a little
intuition,
bit of this, what we're talking about here, because
right?
we have a couple features here. One of them is Smart Match Assist. That's what we're going to show you, give you a sneak peek into to eliminate searches with no results. So using AI to really generate these predictive responses, like what should this no result actually be? And then our most recent enhancement has been smart ranking. So using advanced language processing to really tune the results based on these deeper meanings. And I know, Corey, you've been smart ranking is really new. We just barely kind of turned that on with TCU. So I'm not sure if you have much to talk about with that, but let's go with this to the Smart Match Assist. And this could be our first real reveal as to how this is working for you. Um, these are some of the
Sure.
terms that we've taken right out of your what you're doing over there. And so what are we
Right.
looking at here?
So the way this works is, after a couple of weeks of kind of the robots listening in to what's being searched, I can log in and I can check the Smart Match Assist tool, and it'll tell me if it has recommendations or not. And so I get a list like this, and then I can run down and decide, do I want to connect these dots or not, right? And it's helpful that it gives me a reason on why it thinks these things should be connected or could be connected. Um, but I don't always want to do that. So things like Corey and Colby, right? We have people named Corey like me, but then we have Colby. Colby is the name of a hall, right? Like it's one of our named facilities. But I don't think that that's what they're looking for. I can't be confident that if they're searching for something that could be a faculty member, it could be a staff member, they probably aren't looking for me unless the website's down. But they're probably not looking for Colby, right? So I waved that one off.
Mhm.
But other ones are very helpful, like farming and agriculture. Okay, that makes sense. Forensics, forensic science, that's a pretty good match. Um, this Codiga Federal, a FAFSA ID, I was like, I'm pretty sure that is a Spanish to English jump, but then I don't think the Spanish is spelled correctly. So I think that is
That
and
one
it's
intrigued
information
me.
I'd never
Did,
call out.
did it catch a
Right,
Spanish typo? Yeah.
right.
Interesting.
So, I never would have built that synonym, right? Never would have happened.
Right.
And then class catalog, class schedule, that's great. And then Calandra and calendars, right? There are just some that I want to make, and then there are others that I have found a few since we've been running this where I'm like, I see in other contexts, right, with other organizations, you would want to serve matches for this term when someone searches for this
Yeah.
one. But maybe at TC, we're not ready to do that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because maybe our
Yeah.
answer to that
Yeah.
extended
Yeah.
search isn't great.
And what I really like to say about this is like when we were building this and I knew it was coming, I'm like, why don't we just put it in the algorithm and make our search better, you know? And this is proof that we need the human intelligence because if that was the case, they'd all be green. And I've seen Corey showed me like it's not always green. We need to connect those dots. So starting with AI number one on the back end rather than the maybe the generative AI front end that everyone's talking about is number one, very more strategic. And the way we're doing it is very very thought out. So it's great to see how you're using it, Corey. Well, I think we're going to go ahead and go to some takeaways here. And I wanted to leave you with a few things in that one is that if you remember three things, one is search is central to your user experience. Um, and I just heard someone saying it's not on their radar recently, but I'm going to actually host another webinar next month about redesigns, and that really is all about this: is that how search is tied to redesigns and things like that. But it is central to user experience and kind of rescue you. It also can support your strategic values. So we talked about that search for good, TCU being one of those leaders. I'm seeing more schools do that, take control of those terms that can forward your institution's mission too. And then these search data are valuable. It's a place where your students and all of your audiences are telling you exactly what they're looking for. So that's going to conclude it. Along with that third one, though, I'm going to make one quick announcement. We're working on some original research around this. It's pretty significant. We're going to announce it in about 6 weeks or so. So stay tuned for that. And I'm going to go ahead and jump into the QA and see what we have. While I have the QA up, I'm going to put my contact slide up. And if anyone wants to book a meeting, I'd be happy to talk to you about your search, about your digital experience, anything about your technology stack, those types of things. But feel free to contact us. And we'll jump into the questions here.
Or bicycles.
Bicycles. Yeah, that would really get me if you really want the meeting. Well, I'm going to hand these to you, Corey. These look pretty. We have some good questions here. So how
Okay.
long does it take to get up and running, Corey? You're
All
a good
right.
one to answer that.
So yeah. We took longer than it needed to take on the TCU side to get up and running. I feel like we could have had SearchStax up and running with the what you guys call the UX accelerator. Kind of if you imagine you log in, you you configure some settings, right? It builds a drop-in widget. You can be up and running in a couple days, right?
Mhm.
Theoretically. Um, and we had that running early, but we wanted some time to kind of test and see and make some metadata changes to our content, right? We were like, this is cool, but I think it'd be even better if we went and made, cleaned up some metadata, kind of, made a few tweaks, and then we think that the search data is going to be a lot better.
Mhm.
So on the data side, we wanted to do a little bit of sprucing up before we launched. So it took us like 3 weeks to get going. But that was on us, right? It could be a lot faster. And then we deployed our custom search, the one that we kind of walked everybody through. That took us about a month to get that going. So 3 weeks in, we had the drag and drop, and then about a month later, we went live with version 2, the custom version.
Perfect. Thank you, Corey. Another one here you've touched on a little bit. Can you talk a bit about how SearchStax integrates with your CMS?
Sure. So what's nice is because it's platform agnostic, um, SearchStack doesn't really care what content it's running on. So it's been really nice as long as your CMS or it could be flat HTML, it could be anything, right? It could be a single page
Mhm.
application potentially. Um, you just put it out there and you can hit it with a crawler and then see what that looks like. You can preview that
Yeah.
data, and then if you need to make some metadata tweaks or some tagging tweaks, it's
So you have
pretty.
modern campus, you said, and then you have some WordPress sites. A lot of schools have multiple CMSs. So yeah, Corey hit it right on the head. Is like we can either crawl it or we can some systems have a direct we have direct integrations, but crawl it or use an API. But often it's being crawled daily.
Yeah.
Um,
And you even give you there's even the option I mean you can hybrid that however you need to, which is nice. Because even with us with the crawler, we could still push stuff in if we wanted, right? So if we wanted to just push in through the API some supplemental data, we still have the ability to do that, which is pretty cool, I think.
So thanks, Corey. Here's another one. It's kind of a three-part question. I'll kind of break it down.
Okay.
Is it extra add-on services within SearchStax to have those tabs on the search, or is it just part of the product? Um, quick answer is it can be done as part of the product. It takes a little extra effort, but I think Corey's team was up to get it. One person got it up in a couple weeks,
Mhm.
or less. So it is pretty easy to build that. And this one you can add on that too, Corey, but I'll throw this one at you. How do you get the programs in there?
Yeah. So for us, so we created basically a custom page type or a page template in Modern Campus, right? We defined it and said, all right, all of our program pages are going to use this style of page, this kind of markup. And then we were able to set some metadata tags, some meta tags in the metadata that power those facets. So wherever we wanted a facet or a facet group, we'd create like a meta tag, and then the different values that we want to make available within the facet, we expose those in the meta tag, and then you just you connect that behind the scenes in the little search UI to say, here's the facet group, here are the facet options, and it'll allow you to then mix and match. It's really
Yeah,
it maybe sounds complicated, but once you look at it, if you have people that are comfortable with HTML, right? I'm pretty confident, regardless of which CMS you
mhm,
have, they could get the facet
right,
stuff to
right.
work.
Thanks, Corey. Here's a comment that says, "I love the map in search. Are there any concerns about accessibility, mobile responsiveness? How did you address them if you had any of those?"
Yeah, so all of our stuff's designed to be responsive, and it's always interesting when you have iframes and you're trying to get that to play nice with a small viewport. So just through testing, I mean, that piece of the integration was on us, like how we control that. So um, the other combination is kind of working with the Concept 3D folks, because it's their app being iframed in. So we just try to make sure that we for small screens, we make the map as large as it can be in the viewport so that
Mhm.
we don't, have stuff that's scroll and you have to do a lot of pinch and zoom to get to it. And then we just provide content. We push as hard as we can to make all the content that we expose on the front end accessible in different formats, right? So that it's
Yeah, yeah.
as accessible as we can make it.
Thanks, Corey. Here's a good one that I want to follow up with, but I want to throw it to you first, Corey. Do you have any data to show how changes TCU has made to its search have led to increased applications and enrollments, or how about within individual schools and colleges within TCU?
We haven't parsed it out to individual colleges and schools within the university, but we have seen increases in our conversion funnels,
Mhm.
right? So funneling people to our Inquire page, our campus visit page, and our, application funnel. We have seen those. We have seen an increase in that, and you can see in the search data, now that we have good search data to review,
Mhm.
um, you can see the sort of admission related searches and where those land, and then are they being clicked through
Yeah.
on, or are they no result searches? So we don't have super great before and after uh, data. It's not super clean because our
Mhm.
search analytics before was
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
difficult
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
understand.
The hard thing about it is to do a real test, you have to get data, you have to change one thing, and then you have to get the data. So
Right.
that's really hard to do. And I have an example of a school who's done this. And so what you're getting into is this other question I'll answer at the same time is about ROI. How do you get the ROI? Like we have no budget. How do I convince someone that we need this? So we get into like, what if you tracked applications for admissions, requests for welcome packets, or orientation signups? I know a school that did that. Then all they did was change their search. They enhanced their search. They saw over a $2 million um, uh, investment or a return on investment within 2 years after that, which changing their search. So it's hard to do, but also calls to your service desk. Like, hey, if we reduce our search, will our service desk volume go down? Um, that doesn't go into your enrollment question for TCU, but some ways to like look at ROI. It's challenging, but it's possible. Um, Here's another one. Is it meant to replace Google powered search integration or work alongside Google Search Console? I asked to scope the CMS integration ad is all configured with Google right now. We're often the replacement for Google, like the Google Search Console. So it used to be called Google Custom Search, Google Programmable Search. Hey, I don't know if you have much, do you have experience with Google, Corey? Do you want to take a shot at this one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I keep an eye on Search Console. So we haven't we use Google Search Appliance before that
Yeah.
went
Before
away.
2017 or 16.
Right. It was basically end of life right when I hired on. So, hey, Corey, welcome. This is broken. This is the new thing we're doing that no one understands. Hey,
Mhm.
great, thanks. Um, but we still pay a lot of attention to Google Search Console. And what's interesting is comparing the two, right? If I look at data from Search Console, right? So this is all people using google.com and then coming in. And then I look at people using site search. Qualitatively, it's different stuff, right? They're using the two tools for distinct purposes, which I think is really interesting. And so I think you'd miss something if you're effectively using the same algorithm for both of those because the users expect them to be different. Um, and Jeff, you and I haven't really gotten into that a whole lot, but it
Yeah.
is really interesting to
Yeah.
see. It's all really generic, like branded stuff that comes in through Search Console for us. And
Yeah.
it's all unbranded, very specific granular stuff when they're on site. And so uh, I think the two could work in
Yeah.
tandem.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you're right, Corey. It's all about effort, like how much effort. I know Google programmable search, which is the newest, free version of Google out there. There is some flexibility, but I don't see many schools that have the resources that are doing much with it. So it's this very plain out of the box implementation. There is some flexibility, and I know you connect Google Visual Data Studio and do all the things you can do really some cool stuff with any product. What we're doing here at SearchStax is really like the efficient way to really productize a higher ed solution, which there's this other question here I'm not going to probably get to. It's about how do we stack up to a competitor. I'm not going to mention the competitor, but in this case, we're higher ed focused. Like that is our real target right now. So you kind of have to know the data sources, like the APIs we're working with these different calendars and even directory integration information. So quick, long-winded answer to that one, but let's see what else we got here. I think that's about it. I think we've covered it all. Any other last questions we have coming in? I think we're right on time too. So give you 5 minutes to spare. Oh, wait, one more. Ooh, is the SearchStax dashboard configurable? And Corey, have you customized your dashboard? Um, I-
I have not customized my dashboard. I really like the way that it works. Um, and there's more to it, right? So we're just showing you kind of, you're getting to look through a keyhole at
right.
the dashboard. So there are a lot of other helpful breakout tools and like, drill down kind of tools that are in there. Um, I haven't found a need really
Yeah.
to try to customize it. And what's nice is I have shared the data with a number of my colleagues that have different, you know, um, whose roles have different levels of technical proficiency, right? And the dashboard makes sense to non-technical folks and technical folks alike. You know, the nerds can nerd out on it, and the non-nerds can be like, oh, that makes sense. Okay,
Mhm.
so I understand what's going on, and you don't have to translate for me. So.
Okay, well, I'm going to close it out with that. And I want to thank Corey first for spending the time with us. That was really fun. And everybody for whoever stayed for the whole webinar. And uh, thanks again. Bye-bye, everybody.
Everyone.